Hello everyone, my name is Ethan. I'm the Public Policy Chair for the Southwest region of Moand. Today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Legislative Day. It's supposed to be happening on April 15th, but unfortunately due to the COVID outbreak, it was canceled. But that doesn't mean that we're not still trying to work to make sure that our legislators know that we are watching and that we care about what's going on here in Missouri. Some of the main things that we're going to discuss today are just going to be some general things about how government works, such as bill creation, the General Assembly. But the big thing that we're really going to hit on and focus on is discussing the new attacks on our licensure by the Alliance of Natural Health, and some ways that we can advocate for our profession even when we can't go to Jefferson City. To start, let's talk a bit about public policy. If you haven't seen Schoolhouse Rock's I'm Just a Bill song, it can be a great refresher on some of the ways that bills are made here in Missouri and on a federal level too. This brings us to how bills are made in Missouri. A bill starts in Missouri's General Assembly. It can begin in either the House or the Senate. It is introduced by a representative or senator and given a number. It is then read twice and assigned to a committee by the Speaker of the House or Senate President, or a pro tem, which is just a temporary leader of the House or the Senate. A public hearing is then held, and the committee meets to make recommendations. If it is voted as favorable, it is then sent to the floor of its originating house to be debated. After it is perfected and reprinted, it has a final reading and discussion with no new amendments added or voted on. If the bill is passed, it is sent to the opposite house for review, and the process is repeated. Proposed amendments are sent to the original house for approval. Both houses then discuss compromises if amendments are not approved. Upon approval, it is sent back and declared truly agreed to and finally passed, and proofread. It is then signed by the Speaker of the House and the Senate President, and sent to the governor, who can sign it or veto it. If it's vetoed, both houses need a 2/3 majority vote to override the veto. If the governor signs it, or a 2/3 majority vote overrides a veto, it becomes a law. This kind of leads us into another interesting area about laws. An area that's commonly misinterpreted is the difference between legislation and regulation. You can look over the differences by pausing the video right now, but one of the big areas to note is that regulation is based on the laws that are made by legislation. And legislation, of course, makes those laws. So some changes can come about with regulation occurring, but overall they have to be based on a law that's already been created, holes that were left over. Having discussed a bit about how Missouri makes laws, let's discuss a bit about Missouri's General Assembly, or the legislative branch that actually makes said laws. The General Assembly is made up of the House and the Senate. The House has 163 members, while the Senate only has 34. Overall, their main duties are to make laws through legislation, but they also set up the state's budget, vote to uphold or override gubernatorial votes, and control the taxes. Currently, both the House and the Senate are controlled by a majority of Republicans. You can find out who your representative or senator is with the link down in the description. This brings us into an actual bill that is being passed in the House and in the Senate, or at least working to be passed. We're currently working hard to combat House Bill 2000, or HB 2000, which is sponsored by Representative Derek Grier, a Republican out of District 100. Also, Senate Bill 893, sponsored by Senator Eric Burleson, a Republican out of District 20. These bills have been shown to be very detrimental to the general public's safety, as well as to our profession as a whole. A summary of both bills is as follows. Under this act, no provision of law governing licensed dietitians shall limit, preclude, or otherwise interfere with any person disseminating free literature or providing individualized nutrition assessment, guidance, encouragement, recommendations, or weight control services. As to the use of food materials, or dietary supplements, provided such person does not call himself or herself a dietitian if he or she is not licensed by the state. If either of these bills were to pass, it would basically give anyone the ability to perform the same duties as we have as a dietitian, such as monitoring a patient, creating interventions, It can really be a huge problem when it comes to looking at the general health of the public. So the next big question is, how do we fight these bills? How do we show that these bills are going to be detrimental to the public? And finally, how do we show that we, the dietitians, are the ones for the job and not the nutritionists? Well, a great way to start out is by giving your cause a face. Introduce yourself. Tell them a little bit about yourself and let them know whether or not you're a constituent. Tell them what the issue is. If it's House Bill 2000, if you're talking to your representative, or if it's Senate Bill 893, if you're talking to your senator. Some things to think about when discussing with your representatives are the three artistic proofs: ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos, or ethical appeal, is used to help convince an audience that you are credible and have character. Things that you might bring up are stories from when you've worked as an RD or even as an intern, as well as stories of what work you put in to become a dietitian. Even simply talking about the 4 years that you put in plus 1,200-hour internship can be huge in letting your representatives or your senators know that you are a credible source and that you've really worked hard to make sure that you are providing the best service to the public. Now remember, it's always a great idea to tell it as a story. Discuss what you've done to get to the point that you've been in, but try not to come off as elite. We work hard to make a difference in people's lives and protect the public with evidence-based research. Pathos, or emotional appeal, focuses on invoking feelings from your audience. You may attempt to invoke sadness, anger, or even disgust. Something to think about would be stories that involve seeing people who didn't receive the proper nutrition education and how it affected their lives. For example, a story that I was told in undergrad that's really stuck with me was about an athlete who went to see a nutritionist so that they could get a little bit better at the sport that they were playing. The nutritionist recommended that they take a variety of supplements, and eventually what happened was the supplements actually caused their kidneys to shut down. They had to go on dialysis. They were no longer able to be an athlete after that. By invoking emotions, we can help people to understand what is truly at stake if we don't protect the public from people who don't have the education and training necessary to aid others. Logos, or the appeal of logic, is meant to convince the audience through logic. The main tools of logos is the use of stats, facts, and citing authorities on the subject. Some facts that can be very important to defend the public are A, that nutritionist is not a legal term, and there are no specific qualifications. Anyone can be a nutritionist. Your cat, your toddler, and, that chair over there. This bill would allow unqualified people to make nutrition diagnosis and individualized nutrition therapy interventions. Something to note is that under current laws, anyone can provide general nutrition education, but only dietitians are able to give diagnosis and intervention. Using a combination of ethos, pathos, and logos is exceptionally effective at aiding and educating the audience that these bills pose a danger to the general public. Finally, I want to thank you all for watching this video. Also, please, if you have a few moments, talk to your senator or your representative and let them know that you don't want these bills to pass. We can work to make Missouri a safer place, but only if we all work together and really show them what it means to be a dietitian.